Okay, welcome officially to the Beginning British Isles Research class this evening. My name is Bob Taylor, and no surprise, we'll be using the Family History Guide to help us get acquainted with doing research in the British Isles. So does everyone have the Family History Guide up on your computer? That's where we will start. Before we get into navigating with the Family History Guide for British Isles research, a point that I'd like to make to keep in mind for everybody is that the more secure we have our research done in the United States before we jump across the pond, the better. And I'm assuming most of us here are U.S. based, but it could be the opposite. But one problem we may run into is if we have an ancestor and we're so anxious to find English or Irish ancestry, but we haven't nailed down the authenticity or the sources for that person, that can lead to a lot of problems. This is, basic genealogy 101, but always try to establish sources and the reliability of the ancestors here before you make that jump over across the Atlantic Ocean. Especially as we talk about Irish research a little bit later on, there are actually more records on Irish research in the United States than there are in Ireland. It's kind of it's a little known fact, but it goes to show that we could be over there looking for things that are actually right here at our fingertips. All right, so in the Family History Guide, first thing we'll show is how to navigate to the British Isles. So some of you have probably done this before. So we go up here to Countries in the top menu, and there is a British Isles entry here. There's also an England entry. So the first country we're going to be talking about is England, so you could get there either way. I'm going to go to British Isles for now just to show you the other things that are there. So you have on the British Isles section of the countries page, you have England, and notice all of the counties are listed right next to it. So you can immediately jump into whatever county you're interested in doing research in as well. And then there are entries for Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom, and Wales. Now you may think, well, why do we have an entry for United Kingdom if those are already taken care of in England, Scotland, Wales, and so forth? The United Kingdom page is basically just a collection of links. And these are links that have record collections that specify United Kingdom. So United Kingdom military service, United Kingdom hospital records. Does that make sense? These are the things that would pertain to all of the United Kingdom as opposed to just England or Scotland or whatever. All right, so let's use this England link here. We're going to click that. And as we go through this class, you can follow along, which you're welcome to do. If you want to just watch on the screen, you can do that too, but most people like to follow along on their computers. So we're going to click England, and that takes us to the England country page here. So one of the first things you'll notice is across the top, you'll see this header area, and that's where we have the navigation goals. This is kind of the key to navigating around the Family History Guide. So I'm going to briefly mention each of these. Research, which is the page that we're on now, you can tell that it's bold, and so that's our current page. It also says it in the title here. Vital records, civil registration, census, probate records, church and cemetery, and so on. We can click any of those and get to that particular topic that we're interested in, just with one click. So as I scroll down here, you'll see goals, choices, and these are fairly new. These headings here divide choices up into different sections. So in getting started with research in England, we have resources and guidelines, and we have a section on records as well. Surnames, English research in more depth. Here are resources, strategies, and some resources on handwriting. Okay, so that's kind of a lot to take in one scroll. But what if I just wanted to see, okay, what choices are we dealing with here? Does anyone know how to condense, I bet Carolyn knows this, how to condense all of the choices so that none of the intervening text appears? Yes, there's an open and closed. You see at the top, open and closed choices. If I click closed choices, watch what happens. All of the text in between, the steps and so forth, is now hidden. And we can see clearly here are the three choices that we're dealing with. And these open and closed choice buttons are available in whatever goal that you're in. And then all I have to do is click open choices, and I can see them back again. Conversely, you can click just the title. So if I want to click, if I click Get Started with Research in England, see what happened? All the text for that choice only disappeared, and now I have the other choices. Now, if I'm just looking at research in more depth, I can concentrate on that, and I don't have to do much scrolling at all because I've closed these other choices. And simply click the title again to open up the choice. Make sense? Okay. So we're going to go to choice A and number 1. And this has a video here. FS stands for Family Search. Get Started, Lesson 1. I'm going to click on that. And notice that this opens up into a separate window. Anytime you click a video or article link in the Family History Guide, it does open in a separate window or a website so that you can close it up afterwards and you don't lose the Family History Guide. So off on the left here, you see this series of four video lessons in the research series. You're starting off with research, and then you've got understanding census records, understanding civil registration, and church records. Those are 4 of the basics that you would want to deal with when you're beginning your English research. Let's go ahead and view the course content just briefly for this. You see in the middle of the screen it says View Course Content. If I click that and enable the player, jump through a few hoops. Okay, I'm going to pause that. Notice on the left, you've got a step-by-step description of the different sections that are available in this video, which is pretty helpful. So you can see at a glance what you're going to be covering. So I would recommend perhaps starting with this one, viewing it in your spare time, jumping around to whatever topics are interesting to you. And as the narrator says, it should take about 15 minutes to complete. So as you can tell, and I just closed that window, as you can tell, the Family History Guide points you to just-in-time learning resources. So if you're interested in something, if you see something that catches your eye, oh, I'd like to check this out, you can find it easily, click, get started, and do your family history in small segments at a time, 15, 20 minutes. You don't have to spend all day on a particular topic. All right, let's go on to step number 2. How many of you are familiar with the English Ancestors site, BYU? Anyone? This is a pretty cool site. So I'm going to click on this. This is step number 2, BYU English Ancestors, Getting Started. Kind of wordy, but I would recommend reading through this. It has really good insights on what you're getting yourself into when you start English research and how to get on the right paths with research as well. So on a personal note, this was put together by a professor at BYU named David Pratt, who happens to be my second cousin, once removed. And the other part of the story is that I actually took a genealogy class from him when I went to BYU. And he put this English Ancestry site together, which is just marvelous. You can see over on the left, there are links for civil registration, census, church records, and some of those expand out, and you can look at more particulars there. So it's a really good way to wrap your mind around English research, and I would suggest or recommend that. Okay, close that. The other Areas in this particular goal: English surnames and surname distribution, and then diving in deeper to English research. Let's skip on over. We're going to go up to the header area, and goal number 2 says Vital Records. So we're going to click that. So it's a pretty simple matter to navigate through the Family History Guide if you're using those header links. So here we have British Vital Records for birth, marriage, and death. In step number 2, you'll see there's an article, RIV. This is from the Riverton Family History Library. British research using the GRO indexes. GRO stands for General Register Office. Okay, so starting in about 1837, the government in England required local areas to start collecting birth, marriage, death information and sending it to the government to have it collected in a master general records office collection. So that's kind of a handy thing, because before that time it was a little bit disjointed, and after 1837 you've got that centralized way to locate birth, marriage, death, vital records, so forth. So we're going to go to open that to British research using the GRO indexes. This is the second half of item 2 here. And point your attention, here we go, it says starting in 1837, British laws required all birth, marriage, and so forth collected. Now, one interesting sentence that I read here, the last sentence, information given in the GRO indexes is limited to encourage people to purchase an official certificate to get the full information. Okay. It's nice to know what we're dealing with. So some of you may know Fred Kiefer. He has done a lot of English research, and he's been a frequent visitor to the GRO site and has purchased quite a few of the documents there. They're not expensive usually. They're a couple of pounds, which is just a couple dollars plus a few. But it's a good way to get authenticated copies. Now, as we'll find out later on, there are ways to get some free information. So you'll have to balance how much information you need versus how much money you want to spend on your research. Okay, so that's a bit about the GRO. Now, there's tips for using the GRO. First of all, we have in step number 4, frequently asked questions for the GRO. This is handy to know. So if you want to know, what am I getting myself into? How do I order adoption certificates or get a certificate quickly? What to do if there's a problem? This FAQ file can be very helpful, even in helping you set up passwords and so forth for accessing information on the site. Another thing that's of good help for the GRO, in choice B, it says learn about birth certificates in England and Wales. So I click on that, and this is from familytreeresources.com, and most of this actually deals with the GRO index. So it has some sample scenarios. I've looked in the index and I still can't find my ancestor. Okay, here's some possibilities. How important are birth certificates to research? What are long and short versions of birth certificates? What about registration districts? So these are things that can help you when you're working with birth certificates or birth information on the General Register's office. Same thing for marriage records. If I scroll down to marriage records and I click on this article link for number 6, Guide to Marriage Certificates, I get the same type of article from the same source, familytreeresources.com, and it walks you through using or finding marriage certificates in England and Wales using the GRO. So these are helpful, kind of helper websites that give you additional information for working with the GRO. Sometimes websites can be a little difficult to navigate, and so it's helpful to have some of these auxiliary sites that give you some Q&A about how to use them. All right, we're going to scroll down just a little bit further, and you see the same type of thing in choice C, learn about death certificates. We won't click that, but now we see this area called quick links. Does everyone find that? If you scroll down just to the end of that particular choice, there's a long series of quick links. What are quick links? Can anyone explain that? Has anyone used quick links? And there was silence in the land, which is okay. So a quick link basically is a shortcut to a record search screen. So for example, we've been doing a lot of learning and looking and so forth through these vital records, articles, videos, and so forth. What if now suppose we're ready to start doing some searching for vital records? What we can do is where it says FS, births and christenings, 1538 to 1975. If I click that link, I'm immediately taken to the family search screen for England, births and christenings. So notice that I didn't have to wend my way through a bunch of menus in family search and try to find, oh, now where do I go to search for that? You have at your fingertips many choices to choose from for the searches that you want to do. And I'll go back to that screen and you can see how many there are. FS stands for Family Search. AC, any guesses what that is? Ancestry.com. FMP, Find My Past. There you go. We also have some MH, MyHeritage as well. Okay, so you see this lightning bolt in front of the quick links. What do you notice up at the top in the header area? There's quite a few lightning bolts up there as well. Every goal that has one of these lightning bolts will have a collection of quick links with it. Does that make sense? So you'll know if you're looking in archives and libraries, that's not going to have any quick links, or newspapers, but if you're looking in immigration, it will. So hopefully that helps as well. You notice this more at the end of that first one that we opened up. This is a shortcut link. It actually goes to the explanations. Family Search has a lot of explanation pages for different record collections. And you can get directly there by clicking the More afterwards to say, okay, what's in this collection? What were the years? How do you search it? And so forth. So some nice tips, handy tips, are available simply by clicking that More button at the end of the quick link. So I'm going to close that up. And as you can tell, lots of things to search. The Family History Guide helps you spend your time doing the things you want to do rather than having to deal with a lot of the infrastructure and overhead of websites and navigating and that type of thing. And there's also links to miscellaneous records. If you go down farther below, all the way to the bottom, these are things that don't particularly fit in one of the counties or other goals that we have here. They may be city-based, like Liverpool or Manchester. Okay. And as we go, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're going to skip over to civil registration. This is goal number 3 at the top in the header area. Here's an article in step 1, Family Search English Civil Registration. So I click, and this is interesting on getting historical background on civil registration. It tells you right off the bat that civil registration is a more recent thing, on July 1837. So don't count on civil registration to help you with older research. Okay. But it does give you a good idea of what's recorded in civil registers. You've got births, stillbirths, adoption, even abandoned children, marriages, divorces, so forth. All right. Now, we mentioned, one more thing I need to mention. At At the end of this civil registration link right here, there's an I with a circle. You see it in step 1. Here's the link, and then there's an I with a circle. If I hover over that, you see what pops out there? You go directly across, hover over, and these are basically links inside that article. So if I wanted to see, overseas and military, it takes you right to that area so you don't have to do the extra scrolling. That makes sense? So plus it gives you a way of seeing what are the topics that I'm going to be looking at in that particular page ahead of time so you can see if you're interested. There are a number of those sprinkled throughout the Family History Guide, and we're always adding a few more as we go. We talked earlier about some free records as opposed to the General Registrar's Office, which charges you for birth certificates. There are some free alternatives, so let's take a look at one of those right now. Possibly the most popular one is Free BMD. So if we go to choice B, which is a little bit farther down, this is in goal 3, choice B. The first item says explore the free BMD site and BMD, of course, is births, marriages, deaths. So I click that link, and it goes to that website. It's got a number of choices here. You can search, very popular, so I'm going to click that. And notice the level of control you have here. You can specify names, surnames, deaths, different options for matching and so forth. Over on the right-hand side, you can select all districts by default, or you can select just a particular district to search. And if you want to select multiple districts, you hold down the control key and you can select a different one as well and add as many as you want. And then to go back to all districts, you just click that and it gets rid of the selections that you had. Is that clear on how to make multiple selections and so forth? Okay, and then counties, same type of thing, all counties, or you can click Bedfordshire and Berkshire, whatever you want to search there. So this is a pretty good way to get some good information about birth, marriage, and death records without having to pay. It is a little limited compared to the full information that the GRO can offer you. Okay. You can order, if, for example, in the GRO website, you can actually order certificates online, and they have a pound to dollar conversion that will tell you how much it costs, and you pay with a credit card, for instance, and then they will tell you the shipping terms of how long it will take to ship you, the copy of the birth certificate or marriage certificate, whatever you're looking at. Okay. Yeah. If you have any questions about issues, we showed that a frequently asked questions guide, and then if you have questions beyond that, Fred Kiefer, who has ordered many of them, would probably be willing to help you out. Yes?
So you're not getting an electronic copy, you're going to get a physical photocopy.
Yeah, a physical copy. Fred showed me the ones that he had, and they were from the GRO, and they were physically printed out.
And Fred works here on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Carol. All right, so plenty of opportunities to explore that. There are also others. There's the UK BMD site, civil registration and family search wiki links, so forth. All right, so now we're going to hop over to church records. So we go in the header area, goal 6, church and cemetery records. So if you're interested in heading back in time farther than 1837, one of your main resources is going to be church records as well as cemetery records. They were kept in more detail and more consistently than the government records going back there. So again, we're going to go to step number 2, and we see our English ancestor site. We saw this briefly, remember, at the beginning. Step number 2, BYU English Ancestor Church Records. And this gives us a really good overview of how church records were collected, how to search parish records and registers, search routines. It's one thing to just dive into searching, but it's another thing to know how were these church parishes and dioceses and deaconries and all of this organization of the Church of England, how was it put together and how does that affect how you do record searches? So these articles can help you understand the priorities and the organization of how the records were assembled, collected, which jurisdictions they were in, so you can do more effective searches as well. And again, we're doing kind of a flyby. We're not going deep into detail on each of these, but there are plenty of opportunities to dig in wherever you find the opportunities and the necessities to do so. Goal number 7 at the top, emigration and immigration. So, question, who can tell us the difference between emigration and immigration? That's always a tricky one. Anyone want to try that one? Yes?
Immigration is within a country.
So you're talking with the E, okay, and what's the I?
That's country to country.
Okay, there's some value in that. The E and the I can be kind of tricky. I like to think of a target and a source. So if you are leaving a current area, you are emigrating with an E. That makes sense? If you're coming to a particular target area, you are immigrating to that place. So if I came to, let's suppose I'm an English citizen in 1750 or something. Well, let's make it later because the United States wasn't the United States. Let's say 1850. Okay, I'm in England. When I get on the boat, I am emigrating with an E from England. Yeah, E for exit and I for in. I guess you could look at it that way. So I'm emigrating from England and I'm immigrating, I, to the United States. So most of the time we're interested in immigration with an I records because that's the receiving source, but sometimes you'll find immigration as well. So that's just a way to keep those two terms separate. So let's, in goal number 7, let's go down to choice B. How many of you have heard of LSI? Oh, a question first. Yes, sir.
Back to immigration and immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it then Immigration Canyon?
Because they emigrated from the east.
Would you be coming in as Immigrant Valley?
Well, let's see if we can get that renamed. No, probably not a chance. But it does point out it's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
From Immigration Canyon is paying homage to the place they came from, I suppose, as opposed to the place that they got to. And that's an interesting point. Okay, so we're talking. Okay, the question is, how many of you have heard of Ellis Island and what is that? Yeah.
Well, that's where most of the people from Europe came to register to get into the U.S.
Right, where most people from Europe came to register to get into the United States. Where is it located?
New York.
New York, yeah, New York Harbor. What about Castle Garden? Anyone heard of that? The predecessor to Ellis Island was Castle Garden. So Castle Garden about 1820 to 1890, and then Ellis Island got really popular and really busy from about 1892 to 1920 or so.
I was trying to find my son-in-law's line who came from Lithuania. They came through New Orleans.
Yes, yeah, a major port in New Orleans, so you have a lot of immigration.
So you'd have the same thing almost on any major port.
Right. Yeah, so if you look worldwide, wherever there is a busy port, and if you're talking about German research, for instance, you'd look at Hamburg as a possibility for searching for immigration records. So wherever you have ports of call, that's where you're going to find a lot of these. So let's take a look, just for fun, at the ellisisland.org site. So I'm going to click, this is in choice B, number 1. I click that, and one of the nice things after you get past the slideshows, you can enter a search name here. So I'm going to enter a person that I'm interested in. Her name is Mary Wood. And there's a click Find Passenger button. And it has all these results for Mary Wood. I was interested in one coming from Scotland, so here's a Glasgow, Scotland that I could check out further. Notice on the right, for these actions, if you hover over them, it says passenger record, ship image, and ship manifest. 3 nice sources of information about these immigrants that came through Ellis Island. Now when I click one of those, it's going to ask me, okay, create a free account. So you don't have to spend anything, but you do have to spend a few minutes creating an account or logging in with Facebook in order to get those additional records to show up. Did you have a question? Okay. So pretty handy stuff. And this this search here also aggregates the information from the Castle Island era as well. So you can search one place and you can get both of them. Another useful site, immigrants.byu.edu. This is also in choice B. I click that, and here we get immigration for many different countries. These are England plus all of the British Isles plus Europe and so forth. So you just enter in an immigrant ancestor's name there, and they can search multiple databases and so forth. Kind of a handy catch-all for immigration. All right, one more thing to show here is goal 10, maps. I'm going to scroll down to choice B. The David Rumsey collection of maps is quite useful. So I'm going to click that link. And you can see, based over time, here's a 1754, here's a 1747, 1736. So you get some detailed locations for the time period that you're researching, and these can be very handy. And if you're looking to find out, okay, I just need to see the counties in their context, you can take number 6, explore the interactive family search map for England. And this is a bit older, you can tell by the logo, but it's still pretty handy, assuming that it shows up. Okay, so this one's taking a little bit longer to load, so we will, here we go. So here you have the different counties and so forth, and when it's fully loaded, you'll be able to click on them and get information, but it looks like it's wanting to take its time, so we'll leave that for another day. We need to move on. Okay, one more thing, and then we're done with England. Goal 14, help, get help. And this has links to research communities, Facebook groups, mailing lists, message boards, genealogy societies. So remember that you're not in this alone. You can get help from a number of sources for your family history research in England. And this is the same concept across whatever country, pretty much in the Family History Guide. You can get help resources for Ireland, for Scotland, Wales, whatever you're dealing with. All right, we're going to skip the counties. Basically, if you go to one of the English counties, you'll get the same type of goals, choices, and steps and so forth, so we won't spend too much time there. Let's go back up to the countries link in the header. And this time we're going to go to the British Isles, and we're going to go to Ireland. So one thing that's a little bit different about Irish research, and Krista Cowan from Ancestry.com likes to call it a 300 to 400 level course in research, as opposed to English research, which sometimes is a 100 and 200. Irish research is a little more complicated. There tend to be fewer records available, and there are a ton of common surnames that you have to deal with, lots and lots of duplicated surnames. But it can be done. I mean, there are many good resources for doing Irish research. So we'll take a look at some of the places you can go. We're here in goal number 1, learn about research in Ireland. One of the things that can help you is, we're going down to step number 7, the Ireland Record Finder. We want to know what types of records we want to search for and in what priority. So Family Search does a nice job of laying out these different record types. What are you looking for? Birthplace, birth date, death information, and so forth. Try these records first. And then in the third column, other records you might try. So just as a matter of example, if I were wondering how useful is it to search newspapers for research in Ireland, I could do a Control F in the browser and just look at newspapers. And you'll see that most of them are on the right-hand side. So they're mostly considered secondary resources, except what? Death, that's right. Death information, newspapers can be a primary source of information for that, for Irish research. Make sense? Okay, that can be helpful to help you prioritize what records you're going to start searching. Close that up. Let's go to choice B. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
Oh,
no.
No? I use this thing, I'm sorry. If I have a question, I will raise it very high.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Touch screens are wonderful. We love them. Okay, so choice B in Irish research. There are some excellent tips here for finding Irish records. Ancestry.com. This is choice B, step 1, tips for finding Irish records. And you've got these different links to Griffith's valuation. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Ties, records extraction, military records, and so forth. And then it gives you step-by-step instructions of how to best find those in the Ancestry catalog. All right, let's go to another great source for Irish records is in choice B, step number 5, the Irish Records Extraction Database on Ancestry. You may not be familiar with that, but it's very helpful. So when you see an example like this, it helps to scroll down and read the about information. So this is 100,000 names of Irish vital records, which was collected by, and now I'm forgetting his name. The Kolob Family Research Center. So very useful for doing American researchers and finding out what types of vital records are available in Ireland. Unfortunately, many of the records were destroyed, and that makes Irish research a bit tougher. Some were destroyed by fire. Some were actually destroyed by the government after they had gleaned and collected a lot of the statistics. They destroyed the records. Maybe in hindsight that wasn't such a good decision, but it is what it is. All right, we're going to go to choice C now. We were talking about Irish names and surnames and how they can be very common. So there are a couple of helpful articles here. We're going to go to this in step number 2 in choice C. explore surname distribution. So click that, and this goes to a John Grenham website. So I'm going to type in one of the common Irish names, which happens to be Kelly. And I'm going to go there. And you can see Kelly's all over Ireland. But if you have a clue as to what county, let's say County Clare, 410, and we're going to click there. Key households by parish in Clare, and you can move around this site and click on them. 21 Kelly households in Offer Lane Parish in 1851-2. Now that's pretty awesome, I think. It helps you see, okay, this is what we're dealing with here. Now these are as recorded in Griffith's valuation. Anyone heard of that? Debbie is nodding her head. All right, since we got you here, no, she doesn't want to share what it is. There's a Sir Richard Griffiths in Ireland who decided it was time to start organizing these land and tax records. So for the purposes of revenues, they were recording what type of land ownership was happening in Ireland, and doing valuations of all of these properties so that they could be properly taxed. Well, with all of that taxing stuff that went on, it generated lots and lots of records, which was good. So you'll find in the British Isles, when the government starts interfering, not interfering, when it starts assisting the citizens of the country by passing legislation, laws, and so forth, a side effect of that is the generation of more records, which helps us as family researchers. It's a good thing. Okay, we're going to close that up.
So how valuable is an old land record book?
An old land record book?
I was given one. And when I was asking the family, happened to be Walsh. And the name I was looking for wasn't Walsh, it was Welsh. But I found out when they moved from Wales to Ireland, they changed it to Walsh. And the lady that I talked to says, you're lucky because there are a lot of priests and they were educated. My brother has a land book you might be interested in. Wow. So I went to visit him and I sent it to my aunt back here in the States. And she decided it was a golden find.
That sounds wonderful. It's great to hear stories like that. Those things do exist and they can really help your research. Be quite valuable. Okay, so we talked a little bit about valuation. Church and cemetery records. This is goal number 5. So it's worth reading about how to find church records. And notice as you get into Irish church records, there's going to be a differentiation in Catholic and Protestant and Jewish. Just like there were in England, we didn't spend too much time on this, but if you go back to the England church page, there is a section for Church of England, and there's a section for nonconformists and for Jewish and others, because each have their different systems of keeping records. All right, so, I just discontinued the family history guide. I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to see how fast can I get back to Ireland? British Isles and Ireland, and there we go. Okay, one other thing to point out is the vault. How many of you have used the vault in the family history guide? So it's up here on the very top level. You see the vault, and then you'll see farther down the list, you'll see countries. So the vault basically is a collection of extra articles and video links that you can use that are not included in the main part of the family history guide. The reason why we separate those out is that we don't want to overwhelm people with too many choices right off the bat. You'll notice anywhere in the family history guide and all those pages that we were dealing with, you never saw more than 1 or 2 links per step. We try to keep it that way to not overwhelm. So here we have England, beginning research, resources, parishes and churches, census, all of these, V for video and A for article. All of these are links to additional information. So speaking of land, probate, and courts, you could spend lots of time there. For Ireland, there are lots of helpful resources on basic research, resources, so forth, including Griffith's Valuation, an expert guide to Griffith's Valuation. Lots of things to discover there. We've put them at your fingertips in the Family History Guide. Okay, time to jump to Scotland. I'm going to go back to the countries page and down to the British Isles. Thinking. And Scotland. Okay, so similar type organization across the top, the different goals that you've seen. One thing I'd like to point out, let's go to choice A, item number 1, getting started with Scotland research. We click that, and it's got some good tips. One of the things I'd like to point out in the introduction, to help you get started, this is about 6 or 7 lines down. To help you get started, we suggest you read the general article, How to Guess Where to Start. It has kind of a funny name to it, but that's actually fairly helpful because when you're doing research, whether it's in Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales, wherever, there are some times when you need to make some educated guesses about dates and places. Otherwise, it's going to be some pretty tough sledding. So I'm going to click that article, How to Guess Where to Start. And this has some good tips for guessing skills. So you can guess a spelling variation, and we were talking about one just here, this family, Welsh and Walsh. Guess a place for every event, and they're talking about family groups here, so I think they're coming from the perspective of having a family group sheet. So you have a family group sheet with some holes in it, some places that lack information. You may have to do a certain amount of guessing. So it helps to make intelligent guesses about where and when certain events happened. And it's best to focus first on the easiest person to find the events for on the chart. Sometimes guessing and doing the research for the low-hanging fruit helps you to find things that will be of benefit to you in the more difficult challenges for research as well. So that's an example of some of the handy things that you can find. As you're browsing through these articles, you'll find these little nuggets and gems that can really make a difference in your research. So as you're inspired to go different places, you may find, okay, that's exactly the piece of information that I needed, and hopefully that will work together in your research plan. Here we see the Scotland Record Finder in step 4. This is similar to the one that we saw for Ireland. Probably the foremost site for doing Scottish research is Scotland's People. So this is choice B, and I'm in step 2. And I'm going to click the Scotland's People website here. So this is kind of a similar layout to that Ellis Island site. Do you remember that we just looked at? But anyway, they've got maps, history, order official certificates and copies, resources and records on the site. So I would highly recommend, if you have Scottish ancestry, taking a look at the Scotland's People website and spending some time there. Okay, so we are in goal 1 of the Scotland country page, and we're down in choice B. Choice B, learn more about Scottish research on the Scotland's People website. Okay, so let's go up to vital records here. This is goal number 3. I'm clicking vital records, And I'm going to scroll down a bit. And in choice A, step number 2, here's an article. It's called Scotland Strategies for BMDs, which are birth, marriage, and death records. You click that. And this has some helpful ways to narrow things down by time period. So if I'm looking for marriages from 1841 to 1854, I click that link. And I find all sorts of helpful strategies that help me narrow down how to do the record searches more effectively, what types of things you should be looking for in that time period, and so forth. Click the back button, and I could pick any of those categories and find detailed information. Verse 1559 through 1840. And of course, it's going to be talking about church records, mostly. Church of Scotland, nonconformists, church records, census records, so forth. Lots of good information there. All right, let's go over to church and cemetery records. This is goal number 4 at the top. I'm going to scroll down to choice A, step number 4. Explore Scottish parish records in the Dusty Docks site. It's got an interesting name to it. I actually corresponded with the website owner and creator. She came up here to visit the Family History Library in Salt Lake, so I got to meet her and spend a couple of days getting acquainted with what she did. She lives in South Australia. It's the remotest place you could think of, but she's done a wonderful job in putting this website together for all of the British Isles. So I would recommend it not just for Scottish, but for English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, whatever. So if I scroll down here just a bit, these are a bunch of surname searches and guides and so forth. One of the things that comes to mind is this historical counties of Scotland. I'm going to hover over one. This is Inverness Shire. I'm going to click that. And look at the resources you have. These are parish registers sorted alphabetically. We're just in the letter A at this point. A, B, and so forth. So you get links to all these different sites that have, my mouse is, that have useful information about church and parish register information. This is a great resource for Scotland or any country in the UK, British Isles, for research and doing church records. Highly recommend that. Okay, we are almost out of time. We got a whole country of Wales. Anyone of you have Welsh ancestry? Okay, sorry to cut that one a little bit short, but anyway, obviously you can find Wales in the British Isles, and then you've got Wales. And here's your goals across the top. And we're going to go to 1, choice B. And one of the things that we talk about here are patronymics. Can anyone define patronymics? Have you heard that term before? Yes.
Your last name is your father's first name and or your mother's first name.
That was very well and succinctly put.
Yeah.
So the names, instead of having a fixed surname like we do in English or Irish research, it flip-flops. And this is the case also with Scandinavian research many times. You've got the first name of the father becomes the last name of the child and so forth. So it gets a little tricky, and it's different for the female and the male. They have Birch and App and so forth. So it gets a little tricky, but understanding the patronymics and pronunciation, this is a good resource here. Again, I'll show you where I got to that. This is choice B, learn more about Welsh names and terms, Welsh names and patronymics there. Okay, and sorry we didn't get through much of Wales, but there's a lot to discover there. In the British Isles, the United Kingdom page, I'll show you that just very quickly. It's basically a collection of quick links that apply to United Kingdom wide. All right, one more thing I wanted to show. This is kind of an interesting, interesting item. I'm going to go back to England. And in goal 1, in the record section, this is number 6. Something I probably could have mentioned earlier, but it's very handy. We just added it to the Family History Guide recently. British genealogy timeline. So in step number 6, I'm going to click that. And you see here the types of records that were introduced way back from William the Conqueror, the Domesday Book, pipe rolls, and so forth. And going century by century, you have these different types of records. Most of them being added when there were government changes or military events and so forth. Tudor and Stuart records. So this gives you a good clue as to when certain types of records were introduced and when they began. So you'll know, okay, I'm not going to be expecting to find this type of record before this year because that's when they were introduced, or this range of years. Coming all the way up through the 1700s, and you can see the Clandestine Marriage Act, calendar changes, public records were anglicized, all of first poorhouses were set up, all of these things having to do with events or government policies and so forth, and they generate records, which is a happy thing for family history historians like us. Okay, any questions? That's a pretty quick view. I hope nobody got lost in one of those towns over there. But anyway, the Family History Guide, I think, can be a wonderful asset as you dig in deeper. It will help guide you towards resources that you need just when you need them. There's plenty more that we didn't talk about, but part of the joy is just digging in and finding it. We've assembled the best resources that we can find in hopes that you'll be able to find your ancestors more effectively. Thank you so much. Any last questions? Thank you. Wonderful class. I'll stop the recording now.